Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, August 4th, 2023. This week's Chairman's Report comes from Jim Bennett, a retired attorney in New Jersey and a member of the AFFT board. It's in the form of a letter responding to a critical article in newstrail.com. Here's Jim's letter. Dear Mr. Gannon, I was disappointed with your June 27, 2023 article in newstrail.com titled FAIRtax Act, Potential Consequences and Mitigation of a Proposed 30% U.S. Sales Tax. I hope you'll agree that faulty information informed your piece and that you will reconsider your conclusions based on the many points favoring the fair tax. First, imagine a tax that taxes wealth at consumption, uses the proceeds to reduce taxes on workers, and provides a full refund to cover taxes on essentials up to the poverty level. That is the fair tax. Above poverty, everyone pays tax on consumption, which they can control, at the same rate, and they pay no tax on payroll or income. The bill, H.R. 25, does not change federal spending. All programs that today's payroll income tax system supports receive the same level of funding under the fair tax. The fair tax adjusts Social Security benefits for seniors for any rising cost of living due to this replacement tax. Business-to-business transactions and exports, including digital transactions, pay no tax under the fair tax. The United States thereby supplants Hong Kong, the Cook Islands, the Cayman Islands, Dubai, Singapore, and the Bahamas as the world's best place to do business, free from business income tax and employer payroll tax. Now note that the original article argued that the fair tax would force businesses to flee to these tax havens. Investment pours into the United States as Fortune 100 corporations and mom-and-pop shops alike receive equal tax treatment. The basis of our current tax system are income and payroll, the products of labor and capital. Now we tell our children to work hard, work smart, and save. But children soon grow up to learn that our 75,000-page compilation of tax statutes, regulations, and revenue rulings tell them to do just the opposite. The fair tax rewards productive activity. Now, is the fair tax inflationary? The sales tax is a one-time increase allowing businesses to operate more efficiently. A more efficient economy results in lower inflation over time. Now let's discuss the 30% sales tax issue. While it's true that the fair tax on a markup basis imposes close to a 30% retail sales tax, no one will pay 30% more than they're paying now. The fair tax extracts today's business income tax of 21%, which on a markup basis is 27%. The fair tax removes that from the cost of doing business. The fair tax also removes the employer portion of the payroll tax. That's 7.65%, which on a markup basis is 8%. That's gone from the cost of doing business as well. In addition to the taxes that businesses must pay, businesses incur tax compliance costs. My dentist once told me that he pays more in accounting and tax preparation costs than he pays in taxes. Almost all tax compliance costs vanish under the fair tax. Now, one can dispute how far pre-tax prices will drop under the fair tax. However, one cannot deny that competition will drive pre-tax prices down in most industries except for snob appeal items. Thus, the combined effects of the advanced refund, the elimination of individual income and payroll taxes, and the removal of business income tax, business payroll tax, and tax compliance cost components from pre-tax prices all means that the purchasing power for most people will rise under the fair tax. Now, under the fair tax, a family at poverty level making $40,000 annually and spending every dime on new tangible goods and services, the things that the fair tax taxes, they would spend $9,200 in fair tax at the cash register. But that family would receive back $9,071 as a refund, meaning they only pay $129 out of their own pocket. Under today's payroll tax, that family would pay 7.65% of its earnings, or $3,060. The savings of $2,931 would more than compensate for any price rises under the fair tax, and if prices do rise, the refund would go up too. As long as the Federal Reserve pursues sensible monetary policies, the U.S. dollar will be stronger than ever. Note that the original article argued that the fair tax is inflationary. So, who should not like the fair tax? Well, the first group would be Congress, which views today's tax code as its ATM. When Congress, no matter which side of the aisle, gives a tax break to one industry, campaign contributions flow. With the fair tax, there would be virtually no opportunity to spend through the tax code. Lobbyists should also not like the fair tax. There are nearly 12,000 estimated lobbyists in D.C., over 50% of whom lobby the tax code and whose clients spend nearly $3.5 billion with a B. Clients would only spend that money under the fair tax if it were worthwhile. Tax lawyers and accountants should favor the fair tax. Now, these professionals are highly skilled and can easily find related areas of work. Several accountants I know love the fair tax, even though it would put them out of their current jobs. They've seen the deadweight effect of our current tax code on the economy and would derive greater professional satisfaction from helping their clients grow their businesses. I also know a Canadian attorney in Toronto who specializes in tax issues uniquely faced by U.S. citizens who live outside the country. The fair tax will put him out of much of his business, but he's still a strong fair tax fan. So, besides Congress members and lobbyists, everyone else should favor the fair tax. Americans for Fair Taxation is the sponsoring organization behind the fair tax. Our board, state leaders, and subscriber base consist entirely of volunteers, and our funding sources are modest. We are nonpartisan and single issue and do what we do because we believe in our cause. Now, I'd be glad to come to New York and have coffee with you to discuss the fair tax. I also have research that I'd be pleased to share with you. Please let me know if you have an interest. In conclusion, Jim's response to the article is seeking, in his nice way, to educate the authors about the errors in their analysis of the fair tax. As is true in many of the articles about the fair tax that get placed in the media, the authors ignore some aspects of the bill and then add to the confusion by asserting that the bill contains provisions that it doesn't. Now, it's okay to oppose the fair tax and favor another type of tax reform, but it's important to be intellectually honest when commenting on any position. If someone sees a problem with the fair tax, don't just discard the entire idea, but propose ways to correct the perceived problem. The members of Congress that care about us don't have to look far for an alternative to the present income payroll tax system that abolishes the need for the IRS. It's H.R. 25, the fair tax. The fair tax transfers power from the government and bureaucrats to the people. We, not the bureaucrats in D.C., will decide how much tax we pay under the fair tax. Now, Congress and D.C. know that there's a better alternative to the present system, the fair tax. So instead of spending time and money doing endless hours of paperwork that don't create anything of value for yourself, your family, or the nation, why not eliminate the unnecessary waste? Isn't it time to end this ludicrous tax collection system and along with it the IRS? When the fair tax is enacted, there will be no need to fear being audited by the IRS or raided by armed IRS agents because there will be no more IRS. Now, there's going to be a vote on the fair tax in the House of Representatives. Speaker McCarthy and the other elites didn't want it, but it was forced on them. So we now have the opportunity to force all members of the House to show where they stand. They can vote for the present income payroll tax system, or they can vote for the fair tax. They can support the corrupt income tax in the IRS, or vote to eliminate it. It can't be any simpler than that. They can hide the true cost of their government, or they can pass the fair tax and show everyone the true cost of government on every retail receipt. And finally, they can support the largest transfer of power from the government to the people, the fair tax, or they can vote against it. If members think the fair tax needs to be changed, then they can propose the change. Don't let them reject the entire bill because it has a flaw that can be easily addressed. Please stand with us and demand that your representatives support a much fairer, much simpler, and much more efficient way to fund the government, the fair tax. The fair tax doesn't pick winners and losers. Because it taxes spending, not earnings, the fair tax lets everyone save for their retirement tax-free. The fair tax will allow us to take back control. The income payroll tax system is broken. It's no longer working. We can't repair it, but we can replace it with the fair tax. Join us and take back control of our country and our lives, not with bullets, but with the elimination of one of the biggest threats to our liberty and economic prosperity, the income payroll tax. We should all remember Edmund Burke's warning that applies to our efforts to take back control. Nobody made a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he could only do a little. We should also remember this quote from George Orwell's 1984, which, if we do nothing, may foretell your and your children's future. If you want to picture the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. So what can each of us do? We can write letters and make calls to our elected representatives and attend Zoom town hall meetings demanding that if they really want to allow Americans to take back control, the first step is to eliminate the income payroll tax system and enact the fair tax. Take back control. Help us pass the fair tax. Help us bring about real tax reform and stop future IRS abuses. By contributing or investing $10.40 a month, you help provide a financial base to Americans for fair taxation. Now, if you can make larger contributions/investments, these will not be used for salaries, as we're all volunteers, but for the needed updates to our economic studies, which will be vital for all future years. Please go to FAIRtax.org and invest in Americans for Fair Taxation. It's an investment in your and your family's future.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at FAIRtax.org.